Welcome to the chaos. I'm Holly Rice, and I'm going to make some things for you guys. The theme of today is thrown and altered. I know everybody's been doing all different kinds of things, but I picked that because that's probably my favorite way to make things. And yesterday I threw a bunch of things so that they would be dry enough for me to build today. So I'm going to throw, but they'll be too wet to build, so through the magic of television, I'll get out the things I already made and build with that, and then you'll get to see a little bit of both. Okay?
Holly, what classes are you teaching in the Art Center?
This time, just Ceramics Revolution on Thursday nights.
Okay.
But
I like what you see. Is there still any spots left in your class?
Not this round, I don't think. But
I don't know where you list.
they're trying to talk me into another one. I don't know if I'll agree or not. We'll see. Feel free to ask me any questions at any point in time. And I'm going to start off. Oh, I have a flask lid in my pocket. I'm going to start off making some squish cups. And you guys are welcome to pick things up or touch them. These are some examples of some cups in the style that I make them. Feel free to pass them around. And I call them squish cups because sometimes I get bored of making handles and I get bored of things that are round. So that's my solution to doing that. It's always weird throwing at new places. It's kind of fun. I'm attempting to perfect my traveling studio so that I can take my tiny potter's wheel collection all over the place and throw pots, tiny pots all over. But I haven't perfected it yet. You're seeing the rough version today. Everybody always asks me why my pots have so many lines on the surface. And I'm going to tell you guys, I'm going to blame it on my dad. Because when I was little, he cut my finger off with a brick accidentally. And I know some people throw with their fingertips, but I usually use my knuckles because my fingertips, two of them on my right hand, are numb. Whenever I throw with my fingertips, I usually wreck what I'm making. My favorite kind of cups to make are probably cocktail glasses. I think it's really nice. I always trade cups with my friends, and I think it's really nice to sit and have a cocktail at the end of the day and sort of like having a little meeting with your friend, whoever made the cup. I can help you with that. Some of you guys probably saw my show at the Art Center a couple summers ago. And I've been making all kinds of things. I'm a sculptor at heart. But that show was really fun for me because it was almost no clay, which was weird. Because clay is really my favorite. But I like to work in all kinds of different materials, ranging from watercolors to wood burning to blacksmithing to printmaking. I feel like if I get an idea, sometimes I just have to find the right material to express that idea. And then I use that material because once you speak fluent sculpture, I feel like you can transfer that to all kinds of other materials. I have it in my head that the next show I want to have is going to have some music in it. I don't know anything about music, but I kind of do. But I think I'm going to make a song or maybe a soundtrack that goes with a bunch of pots. Because I figure a song is like a sound sculpture. The same thing as a physical sculpture, but it's just arranging things in different ways. So I'm going to try my hand at that. I'm just throwing 3 cups to warm up because I haven't thrown anything yet today. When I first sit down at the wheel, my usual exercise is to just throw 3 things. And by the third one, I'm usually warmed up. Throwing's kind of like athletics in a way. I feel like you have to stretch your body and sort of prepare your mind and focus. Otherwise, it's hard. You have to get in the right mindset to have a conversation with whatever you are making. It's like a warm-up. So whenever I'm doing my warm-up, I always think about, what new kinds of lines could I make? Or how could I change that shape a little bit to do it better or different or whatever. Like it might be nice to have some lines to grab onto. One more warm-up pot. Anybody have any questions for me? Feel free to toss them out. I taught high school for 20 years, so I can handle whatever you throw at me. It's fun to see all these people that I've known from different parts of my life. Thanks for coming, guys, on a very hot Saturday. I should explain the process. I know some of you are potters, but yesterday, your daughter helped me wedge up a bunch of balls of clay. So when you're preparing it, you cut it out of the bag of clay and you wedge it like this to even out the air and the water and all the things. And then when you sit down to throw, if you make it into a ball and put it on the wheel head, then it's round on the bottom, so it squishes out any air bubbles and makes a nice tight connection to the bat, which is hooked to the wheel head. And you use water on your hands to make it not stick. Different kinds of clay necessitate different amounts of water. And this is my favorite clay body. It's called Rod's Bod. And I like it because it has a lot of grog in it, which is kind of like a fancy word for sand in a way. And it makes it easier to hand build with because a lot of the things I do, you can see those flasks, they're thrown pieces, but then I cut them up and build with different parts. And it's nice to have a little grog in the clay so that it's easier for me to build and stack things on top of each other. Because sometimes I make big things. And the grog helps with the structure of everything. I just really like this clay body. I will say, if you have a phone that requires fingerprints to get into it, don't use this clay because it sands off all my fingerprints. I had to get a new phone that didn't require that because this didn't work. When I taught high school, I started memorizing dad jokes because sometimes when there's like 20 people standing around you waiting for you to do something and you have to sit and throw, it's nice to keep them entertained. You guys want to hear some dad jokes? Yes. Did you hear about the scarecrow that won an award? He was outstanding in his field. What did the trout say when it ran into the concrete wall? Damn. One of my longtime friends, Jan, that's taken my class forever, always tells this joke. What did the 0 say to the 8? Nice belt. There's your joke warm-up for the day. Okay, so that's the start of a cup, which I have over here. And these I threw yesterday, so they're not sticky when I touch them. They're just leather hard. That means this is like super plastic wet clay. This is leather hard, but I can still squish it. I told you, I'm bored of putting handles on everything. So sometimes I squish it with my right hand, sometimes I squish it with my left hand, because this is going to shrink about, I don't know, 15%. And it's going to be a little smaller than my grip, but when it shrinks, I might be able to reach it left-handed, and it's kind of nice to hold that way. It's kind of nice to hold this way. And then the bottom, I don't always like to trim things. So I try to throw them thin enough so I don't have to trim. And I usually just roll the bottom like that. And then I take a rubber rib like this, because I do think it's important to finish all the parts of a piece. The first thing I do when I go to an art fair or something and I'm looking at other people's work, like all potters, what do? You pick it up and flip it over and look at the bottom, right? I don't want there to be any part that is not finished. I don't want any future table scratchers. And I want it to have a finished looking base. So just by pushing it in a little bit, it kind of gets a little more finished looking. Feel free to, sorry, that one's a little slimy, but feel free to pass that one around. I'll squish these cups. You guys want some more chairs? Everybody okay? Okay. Does anybody else in here like to make cups? Yeah? What's your favorite thing about making a cup?
It's a great gift.
It is a great gift. I like to imagine my friends using it and, you know, having that morning meeting with me. Sometimes potters trade coffee cups all the time, and I always feel like when I sit down to drink coffee out of one of my friends' cups, it's just like a morning conversation, you know, it's kind of fun. Slows things down a little bit. And often I'll use their cup and then I'll send them a text just to say hi because it's kind of fun. Sometimes I think clay is my favorite material to use because it's totally one of the most flexible materials on the planet. I mean, what else can you think of that is in everything from spaceships and computer chips and plumbing pipes? That's kind of a broad variety.
Do you sign your work?
I do. Sometimes I make different stamps, or sometimes I just write on the bottom with a pencil, whatever I feel like for that thing.
New stamp for a new decade, or?
Yeah, I probably should do that. But usually I just make a new stamp when I lose the old one. And then I find it again like a week later, and then I have more stamps, so it's fine with me. My studio's in a bit of disarray. My husband and I bought about 20 acres from a really sweet older gentleman named Kent about, probably 8 or 10 years ago now. And Kent was a collector in every sense of the word. And I don't know if any of you have ever purchased a property from a hoarder, but it has been quite a reclamation project. And when I was building my studio, there was this abandoned building that anyone normal would have torn down. But for some reason, I decided that I could save it. You've been there, you've seen it. It's crazy, you've seen it. It's a lot of fun, but it sort of occupied a lot of my time. So for a couple of years, I wasn't making as much work as I usually make, and I was kind of mad at myself about it. But then I thought about it, and I realized that my studio was also a sculpture, just like the regular pots that I make. So I quit giving myself so much grief and just decided it was just a large installation that I was working on, and I felt a little better about it. But I'm really glad to be getting back into making a lot more ceramic work because I miss it. If I don't touch clay at least once a week, I feel kind of loony. Thanks.
It is a hard work.
It is. You're right. It had no roof, no windows, and it hadn't had electricity in 50 years when I decided I could save it. And it's a cinder block building, and one of the walls was falling down. And it was, I'm telling you, anybody normal would have run for the hills, but for some reason, I was like, I want that. So then I had to learn how to do architectural drawing. And I drew the plans, and I don't really know what I'm doing, but I just know enough to be dangerous. And I was like, okay, I want it to look like this. What do I do? So then I just had to figure out how to do all the things. Oh, this is why I got this one. Okay, this one. It's too thin on the bottom. But I like this texture. So this is going to lead me into how I make this kind of thing. Because I have to tell you, when I was getting my undergrad, I thought the wheel was an evil torture device, and I wanted absolutely nothing to do with it. It was terrible. I saw this giant 6'7" dude give a demo, and he's just built differently than I am, and I sat down to throw, and I was like, God, I hate this. This is awful. So I coil built every single thing, or I slip cast it, or I slab built it, and I did any other means of construction besides the wheel because I just hated it. I didn't like it at all. Then one day I was watching somebody else throw, and I thought, God, maybe I should give that another try. So I locked myself in my studio and threw for like 6 months. And I started thinking, oh, well, you don't have to make round pots. You can make whatever the heck you want. So I started taking pots and making them into ovals. Like this would be a great body for a flask, or a little planter, or a little whatever. You can make a million things out of this. So then I started throwing through the bottoms of everything and cutting things up, because I think that's really fun. And every time I give a demo at the Art Center, some of you have taken my class a million times and you know, what do I do after I throw the first thing? I just smash it, right? It's so fun. Partially I do that because a long time ago, one of the first classes I ever taught at the Art Center, the most hilarious thing happens. I'm going to tell you an embarrassing story right now. I think we all can handle it. But I was doing a throwing demo and I had hiking boots on, and my shoelace got caught around the bottom of the chair that was at the wheel. And I threw this pot, it was like this tall. And when I tried to walk, I tripped and fell flat on it and smashed it flat on the floor. And it was so funny. I could not keep myself together. So everybody was laughing, and I thought, oh, God, that was a really good way to sort of loosen things up. So now I just do it every time because I find that grown-ups are a little hard to loosen up sometimes. And it takes a sense of play to make things that are fun and sort of courageous and different. And I think if you are willing to play a little bit, you can sort of discover all kinds of new ways to do things. And so some days in my studio, when I'm just looking for new stuff to build or new thing to try, I'll just throw a million parts and pieces, and that might include cylinders, might include just any shape I can think of. Then I take all the parts and I sort of stack them. And sometimes I even keep things that are broken. Like I like this, but I got in a hurry and I put it in the kiln wet and it blew up. The whole kiln load blew up. But I keep this because I might want to practice handles. And so I'll put handles on my bisqueware just to get a visual, and I'll sort of set it across the room and treat it like a sketch and just think about it for a little bit. And if I have all these parts and pieces around, it's much easier to force myself to try new things. Or I'll set silly rules for myself like, okay, today you cannot make any forms that you already know how to make. You have to try totally new things. And I'll just make totally new things. And I might smash them all, but maintaining that sense of play and relaxation is super important to me because you probably figured out already that I'm a little bit silly. I've come by that honestly because my dad is a 78-year-old 5-year-old still to this day. He drinks chocolate milk for supper with hot dogs. He's taught me most things I know about being silly. Those of you that know my dad can probably agree to that. But it's taken me a long time to figure out how to get all of you grown-up people to play. And the more you can relax and the more you're willing to wreck things, the faster you're going to progress and the more you're going to learn and the more fun you're going to have. Because when I taught elementary school for a couple of years, the longest 3 years of my lifetime, by the way, I knew that's what I did not want to do forever, but I really enjoyed the sense of fun and freedom that the kids bring with them. I've lost my serrated rib already. Oh, here it is. And after I taught elementary school, I was like, okay, I like this sense of fun and freedom, but how can I get everybody else that's not in this age group to play like this? Because it's so much more fun, and adults relax and have a good time whenever they are playing. So how do I do that? What can I do? And I feel like if you just go into it with no expectations, like I usually tell everybody on the first day at the wheel, that they're not allowed to envision some shiny red vase on the end table next to their brown couch that has a golden coaster underneath it or whatever. That is not how you start off your learning journey in ceramics. You got to start off in the first day of kindergarten. And in high school, I didn't let them keep any of the pots they made for the first 2 weeks, and they were so mad at me. But they got a lot better in those 2 weeks. There's been long chunks of time in my life when I haven't had access to a kiln. And I think it's really fun and informative just to make things that you know you're not going to fire. Because you can always just reclaim them back down and use them again. Clay isn't wrecked, well, until you fire it, I guess. Then you cannot make it anything but what it is.
But could you keep it for 2 years? I'm just learning. So
Yeah.
Keep it for like 2 years and still this fire that long? Later?
Sure.
Okay.
This is a good example. When I was 8, I took my first ceramics class at the museum in Kansas City. It was about dragons. Everybody else made like one dragon, and I made a 2-story castle, a dragon, and an entire army of warriors, and a nest for the dragon to live in. And I think my parents were like, oh my God. But I found one of those dragons. It was completely solid and about 12 inches high, and it was probably 40 years after I made it, and I found it, and I fired it. And it's fine, because it got to dry for 40 years, so all the water was driven out, so it didn't blow up. But yeah, you can wait however long you want to wait and fire it whenever. If it's wrapped in plastic, it'll probably stay wet for years. I just got a new kiln last week from here. It was very exciting. I haven't hooked it up yet, but I'm really excited to do that. It's my first kiln with a computer, so that I don't have to get up at all hours of the night to go out to the studio and turn it up. I'm very excited about that. I feel like I finally reached adulthood at the age of 48. Okay, so now it has a new base, but those throwing lines are evident, right? Which I love that. Gives a sense of fun to the form. So I finally learned how to throw, but I realized hand building is still my favorite. This is what I'm doing right now. It's called hand building. Building with my hands. It frees you up to make all sorts of things. A long time ago, there was this place in town called the Olive Gallery. Does anybody remember that place? It was 8th Street. Maybe it's called Henry's now. I don't know what's there, but it used to be an art gallery, and my friends owned it, and I had a big show there in about 2003, and I decided to make hundreds of ceramic cakes, and I turned the whole gallery into this weird world that looked like a bakery, and I challenged myself to make 0 pots for the entire show. So I turned all the pots into cakes, and it was so much fun that it made me start thinking, what else can I make besides cakes? So I made cocktail glasses, but I also started making flasks. And that's what I'm making right now. What I'm doing now, I'm trapping a little air inside this thing so that I can use it to my advantage. I'll show you what I mean. I like these little rough edges. I like those smooth throwing lines. I think that combination of all the different things is kind of nice. Which one do you think should be the top? Think that should be the top? Or this one? Let's vote. If you think this should be the top, raise your hand. If you think that should be the top, raise your hand. Okay, this wins. So if I'm going to make this the top, if I take the bottom and push it in a little bit, just like I did on those cups, so that it has a place to sit, it looks more finished and intentional. And now it looks more like a foot than a top, right? So I just bossed it around and told it what to do. And I could set it there. And when I puff the bottom in, it puffs the top up. Because that air is trapped inside. Okay, so that's the start of a flask. It needs some sort of pouring mechanism, right? I smashed the spouts I made on the way here, so I got to make some others really quick. So that's the next thing you're going to get to see. I don't usually weigh out the clay, but I was trying to be really organized. So I did weigh out some clay yesterday. The cups are about 16 ounces. That's usually what 12 ounces, sorry. That's usually what I use for a cocktail size glass. I have a tendency to throw really thin on cups because if you think about how they're used, they hold liquid and that makes them heavy. So I like really light cups. But when I'm making flasks, I might throw a little bit heavier just because they're handled differently. All the things are different. This time, I'm going to throw a spout or a spigot or whatever you want to call it. Somewhere brought a bamboo stick for this, but I can't find it, so I'm going to use a paintbrush handle. Okay, when you're throwing, the first part is called centering. So when I sit down to throw, I'm centering my brain, I'm centering my clay, I'm centering all the things. I put water on there so it doesn't stick to my hands. And usually you go a little faster at this phase because it's way easier when centrifugal force works with you instead of against you. People throw all sorts of different ways. I tend to push in from my hip bone on my elbow. Some people throw both hands this way. Some people are left-handed and they spin the wheel the other direction. All the ways are fine. And if you saw a throwing demo from 5 people, you would probably learn 5 new ways to throw. And I think that's part of the fun thing of ceramics. Still to this day, I love going to throwing demos and watching all of the different things. Because you can always learn something new from each different person that you see. Some people throw with a sponge in their hand. Some people throw with their knuckles. Some people throw with their palm. What I'm doing right now is essentially called throwing off the hump. I'm not making anything out of this bottom part. I'm just making a new spout off of that top part. And I don't know why I have a thing for old gas cans. You know, like, well, the cheap red ones with the yellow plastic spout. I love those. And so when I make flasks, I'm often thinking about those gas can spouts, spigots, pouring areas. And if I'm making a slightly upscale gas can spout, this is how I do it. If I put water in there, it's going to help what I'm about to do not to end in disaster. So if you take a dowel rod and you put it in the center, and you're throwing a tall, thin thing, you can throw around a dowel rod. Because I can't get my fingers in there, it's too tiny, but I need it to be that small because it's just going to be the pouring area of my spigot. My flask. See, this is the hard part about working in new places. I leave my tools everywhere. My systems have been disrupted. Whenever I make a pouring vessel, I always think about the lip. Like if that's going to pour whiskey out of it, it needs to have a nice lip. So I try to leave a little crisp edge that will cut the stream of liquid when I'm pouring so it doesn't dribble down the side. I have to think about that now because even though it's not pouring liquid now, it will in the future, and this is the time to do it. So I make a nice clean edge, and then I channel the yellow plastic gas can vibe into this thing. And then I can pick it up. And tap it off. This is too wet to put on here at this moment, but I can bend it right now. So eventually, that's my gas tank spigot. And when it is the same dryness as this, I can attach it. But I'll set it there right now so you can see its future and what it will have happen. But I feel like it needs a handle. Maybe something like that. So the next thing I'll show you is how to pull a handle. I'll tell you, this is the worst possible thing you can teach to a classroom full of freshman boys. And that is the truth. But I think you guys can handle it. They probably could. I might not want to learn the things that they have to teach me. How am I going to what? Oh, probably tequila. I'm going to cut a hole in it. Back here. Then I'll put a cork in the back hole. Then a cork in there. So that way, when I pour, it can have an air hole to pour smoothly. Kind of like that. And then I save the fancy flasks the corks from tequila or whatever I have that's nearing the end of its time. And then it looks pretty sharp with that in there. You could pass that around. That's bisqueware. It's been fired one time. In ceramics, the order of operations goes greenware, bisqueware, glazeware. And at that phase, it's safe to dip into glaze because it won't dissolve anymore. So I can dip that into a big bucket of liquid and it won't dissolve back into mud. If I dipped this into a big bucket of glaze, it's done for. I suppose you could spray it, but it's much easier to not spray it. You can see why every ceramics teacher despises teaching this to a room full of teenage boys. But when you're making a handle, this is the strongest way to do it because you're applying pressure and all the little platelets of clay inside are getting aligned in a really strong manner. If I just roll the coil on the table, it would not be as strong as this. And this was made in a similar manner to that. It's applying a similar pressure to when you throw. So it's probably going to warp similarly, shrink similarly, and do all the things similarly. If you make a handle from a slab and you put it on a thrown thing, sometimes that can cause chaos. Sometimes it works. It just depends on the thing. I always make really long handles because my brain works in series. And I make like 50 things. When I sit down to make one, usually I end up with like 50. I hang the extra handle over the edge like that. I probably should have worn an apron. Everybody's like, why don't you wear aprons? I have a fear of aprons because one tried to kill me one time. Some of you know the story. Do you guys want to hear why I hate aprons? I was throwing at 2 o'clock in the morning one time. This is 20 years ago probably. And I had an apron on and it had one of those things around the neck. That's how you tightened it. And so there was a long string. And when I bent over, it sucked me down and it pinned me to the wheel head. And I was all by myself and I couldn't stop laughing because it was absurd. So it was a very difficult extrication. And I thought to myself, I'm never wearing an apron again. And I haven't. Because that would be a terrible way to die. That's not how I want to go. Actually, I have a stiff bristled hairbrush in my car. And when I get home, I just brush like crazy and it looks pretty fresh. It can go in the washer at least. Yes, yes. Okay, so when I attach things together, here's how you have to do it. If I stick it like that, it looks like it's going to stick for now, right? But no, when it dries, it's going to fall off. So you have to convince it that you want it to live there. So I'm going to take this needle tool and score it so it has a place to grip onto. I'm going to score this thing. I'm going to put a little water on there. That makes clay glue, which is better known as slip. Then I'll stick it on there. That's the kind. I scored both sides, yes. And ideally, I should have probably waited until this dried a little bit, but I was born 3.5 months early, and I'm not very patient naturally, so I just stuck it on there. But when you build things for real in your own life, in your own studio, you should wait for them to dry to the same dryness. And then it won't shrink too much and fall off your pot later. My grandpa had a really nice shed in Hoxie, Kansas. He would say Hoxie, America. It's a tiny little town, population probably 800, I don't know, out in western Kansas. And he had this shed. And he had all these old oil cans and gas tanks in that shed. And I just felt like it was a really magical place. So ever since I was a little kid, I've been thinking about old mysterious oil cans and devices that were used to do mysterious things in my grandpa's shed. And I think that's what's fueled my love of weird old fuel cans. And my husband is a mechanic, and owned an auto shop in Kansas City for a long time. And there's all kinds of weird things in there that I also found fascinating. I think when you're an artist, you take all that imagery that you see throughout your life and you transform it, and it goes into your work in different ways. Everyone has different source imagery. But I like making things and building things and playing. And I think all of those things go together in my brain, and then this kind of work comes out. Maybe other artists work differently than that, but I feel like everybody sort of digests things in their own way. Sometimes I make ceramic stoppers. Sometimes I save old corks from tequila or whatever. There's a million different ways that you can do that, but that's sort of my gas tank flask impression. No, you guys are sweet. Does anybody know what a Chesterfield couch is?
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm fascinated with those, but I love the texture of those. And one day I was thinking about those, and then I started making pots like that. That's just how it came out of my brain. So I was thinking, I should probably make one of those for you guys today. And yesterday, I threw this, and it takes a little thinking, and I knew it was going to be hard for me to focus because I'd be telling stories and doing silly things. So yesterday, I threw this, no bottom. We're going to put a bottom on it together. But on this part, I just took a pencil and I marked dot, 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 and then one dot in the middle between the dots. I will show you my method for that in a second, but I wanted to show you this first so you could see how I puff it out. Now that that is on there, I can take my finger while I'm thinking about the Chesterfield couches that I have been obsessed with all these years. And I'm channeling my inner Chesterfield couch into this part. And I told you I throw cups really thin. Well, these I always throw a little thicker because the thicker you throw them, the more volume you can achieve from this part. And I feel like a couch should be puffy, right? So I throw these thicker and then I have more material to work with to stretch. When you throw, it is a totally different way of touching clay and handling clay than it is if you're hand building. And I think combining those two things, hand building's slower, throwing's fast. And I need both of those in my brain to sort of enjoy it the way that I want. Because ceramics is an enjoyable process. And so I really do like this part of the process. And I also like the little marks that my fingers leave on the inside of there, because this is not bought at Target. You can't go there and buy one of these. A human made it. And I kind of like that sense. If I wanted a round thing, I'd go to Target and buy a freaking bucket for real. But I don't want a round thing. I want this. That's a great way to make a planter. And it's not round. I manipulated it a little bit and turned it into an oval. It could have been square, could have been whatever the heck I wanted. But I think oval is kind of nice. And if you want to feel, where did I put that pot? This one. I know the bottom is blown up, but I think it's kind of nice to be able to feel other people's hands and the marks that your hands make. So feel free to touch this and this. This is a lesson learned. Don't fire things when they're wedgeable because they'll blow up. But feel free to touch it and just check it out. That always helps me understand things better when I know how they're made. And then these I threw yesterday for the purpose of making a base for my bucket. This thing. Sometimes this is how I make plates. Because you can make a stellar sushi plate by flattening it out. I mean, who wouldn't want to eat sushi on that sucker? That's awesome, right? But today, it's going to be a bottom for the bucket.
So when you made the handle, you said you were aligning the platelets.
Yeah, kind of like when we wedge, that does the same thing.
So everything is getting a directional orientation.
Yes.
I think it's stronger. And
Yes.
does that mean that if you did something on the wheel, you're also aligning the platelets?
You're compressing it. Yeah.
And if you're hand building?
Yeah. Well, yes, mostly yes. I need to stretch this a little bit, so. Do you see now how it's all floppy? That's sort of intentional because it kept the texture, but now it's just as floppy as that bucket. So when I put it on, I can manipulate it a little better. And that part was thicker than the rest, so it was in my way and it was annoying. Anybody see a serrated rib anywhere? Oh, I see it. I need about 10 of these in my life at all times. Oh, yes. All the time. I need it. That's why I wear shorts with cargo pockets all the time, because you would not believe the things that get put through the laundry before I find them. But I always have serrated ribs and all of the things in my pockets. Anybody else a hand builder in here? What do you guys like about hand building? What do you think are the differences between throwing and hand building?
More relaxed.
It's more relaxing. You find the wheel stressful? Mm-hmm.
I have more control.
Yeah.
I feel like I can make it when I want it more, whereas on the wheel, like, it almost never comes out to me what I.
It does sometimes tell you what it wants to be instead of listening to what you're trying to tell it. I agree.
It's also less susceptible to my emotions, because you've
Yes.
seen me do.
Yes.
Yeah, I went in
No.
one day in her class and I was like, I had a really frustrating day, and I'm like really stressed that I'm on the wheel, and I do every single day. And I'm like, it just.
But did you feel better after that?
It was frustrating that I couldn't take the thing at one
I know it.
so then I just quit and went back.
That's the hardest part about ceramics. It doesn't cooperate sometimes. I also think that's part of the fun of it, because it is a conversation and a partnership. You can't just be like, I am making a cup. Sometimes you start out making a cup and you end up with a planter or a bucket or an alligator or whatever happens. I mean, you never know. It could be anything, but it is a conversation for sure. I got another dad joke for you. You guys want to hear it? What's the difference between a well-dressed man on a bicycle and an athletically dressed man on a tricycle? A tire, you're right. Anybody know why the baby strawberry was crying? His parents were in a jam.
So, Hollie, could you tell us, like, what are your 5 favorite tools for hand building? Like, what, because just.
Serrated rib, a paddle, which could be a paint stick. I like paint sticks to use as paddles. I like a chopstick that's been sharpened in a pencil sharpener. So it's like a pencil that doesn't write. I like a cut up piece of a bandana, because you can use it like a chamois and smooth things, like no idea where I put mine, but I keep a piece of a bandana all the time. Is that 5? Did I say 5? Oh, and I make some stamps. I think stamps and personalizing your tools is a very important thing. I mean, I know we're at a clay store and you can buy all the tools in the world here, but it's also really lovely to make your own tools, because the more types of tools that you make that make marks on your clay in new ways, the more individual your work is going to look. So I try to make a lot of my tools, and I make a lot of stamps. Like that flask, I stabbed my pencil in there, which I could have used my chopstick that was sharpened in a pencil sharpener, to make it look like rivets. And I often bring in little elements like something that looks like screws that attach a handle or the base of something. And so I make some stamps that accomplish those things.
My favorite thing we did in one of your classes was making what, like print rollers.
Oh, yeah.
Clay, like
Yeah.
so, like doing it and then carving your own pattern into it. I still have that in my box, and I can use that pattern for whatever I want.
Yeah. Yeah. I think what she's talking about, that was this one day we extruded a coil that was like, I don't know, that big. And I cut them into chunks, just solid, about that long. And then I let them get leather hard, which is the state these are in, where you can carve on them, but if you bent it really harshly, it would probably crack. That's the stage called leather hard. And you can carve into it to create, well, there used to be a thing right here with all those little texture balls on it. Yeah, it's like carving textures into things, just in the same vein as those are. That's what we made in our class one day.
I had to move it out of the way because you're so positive.
I do what I can.
So when you made those, did you hollow out the center? Or did
You know, I just left them because if they're, well, actually, maybe I shoved a dowel rod through them, because there's 2 ways you can use it. I could roll out a texture by putting a dowel rod on it and just rolling it across something, or I could just use my hand like this. But whenever I make a tool, I try to make it perform as many functions as I can make it do. Okay, I'm going to show you a trick on how to get 2 similar size handles. My dad calls the handles that I make on pots like this, he calls them bitch wings. Because he says they look like ladies on the golf course that are complaining with their friends and they got their elbows out like this. So I always think about that when I'm making pots. I'm like, okay, time for your bitch wings. Does he call your handles bitch wings too? That would be crazy. Okay, so this is part of that handle I pulled earlier, right? I'm just going to cut it right down the middle, and then I'm going to use each part to make a different handle. So I already have 2 pieces that are the same width, the same length, and I made them the same way. So hopefully they're going to be somewhat similar by the time I get to the end. But I'm also okay with them not being, because like I'm not a machine. And I cut that side a little thicker, but I don't really care. Sometimes one arm's stronger. I mean, what if you're a softball pitcher? You're going to be buffer on that arm. And that's fine with me too. When I make handles, I think about a couple things. Well, this most likely is not going to get picked up by its handle. I would say this is more of a decoration. Some handles you need to think about if they're sturdy enough. These would not be sturdy enough to pick up this pot from, right? If this was a coffee cup, I would probably not put these handles on it. But this is sort of a attitude edition. I just want it to have a personality. So I'm activating it in my mind. And it needs a little pizzazz. So that's the start of this one. I'm just going to put that there for a second, and I'm going to do that same thing with this one. I am rounding those edges just slightly, because I don't want it to be sharp. I mean, you got to include good practices with all of your work that you make, and you don't want a lawsuit on your hands if somebody picks up your handle and slices their finger, because when you fire this, it's going to have super sharp edges. So I always do think about the edges and the bottoms and the seams and all the things, and you do have to take care of those areas, but you can have a little fun with handles like this when they're not really functional for picking up the vessel. I just tapered that down to a point and left it bigger at the top. Now I got two that are pretty similar. Now to put them on, I usually sit and hold the thing that they're going on. I drank too much coffee today. I'm all... If I hold it like this, I can sort of think about where I'm going to put it. That part's not fat enough. If I put it there, and I just sort of mark around it, I can score those areas where it's touching without marring the texture I worked so hard to achieve on the surface of this pot. And I bought these brushes at Ensika. They were super cheap and I love them. I think I'm going to buy brushes at Ensika every year. I wish I knew, but it's written in Japanese. They're calligraphy brushes, I've been told. Thank you. I was wondering what kind they were. Okay, so there's wing one. Now for wing two. I think after this one, I'll make some three-legged planters. Anybody here have a garden? I got a garden. My tomatoes got infested with hornworms. It's killing me. Yeah. Okay, it's a little sloppy, but I'm not super worried about cleaning it up a lot at this time. It's still a little wet. And half of ceramics is waiting for the clay to be at the right phase to do what you want to it. And I could spend all the time in the world finessing this and getting all the little bumps out right now, or I could wait like 30 minutes and then it will be a little drier and much easier to handle. So I'm just gonna set it. I'll set it right here so you guys can see it. But there's that. Let's see. Okay, three-legged planters. This guy is a three-legged planter. Like imagine a cute little succulent or something in there. But I made it from a bottomless cylinder. And you can either leave a gap in the middle or you can put a ball of clay right there and spread it out so it fills in that little gap. But here's a planter to pass around so you can sort of get a feel for it. Maybe after I make this one, I'll put some stripes on it or something. So here is one of those that I threw yesterday. I don't know how big it is. It's maybe like 3 pounds of clay or something. But if I just take it and start walking it in like this, until it meets see it forming? I'm going to come back here and hit it with my rib. You guys know what the most patriotic type of bee is? A USB. Okay, I scored it. I'm gonna take my new favorite brush here, my calligraphy brush, and put a little water there. And I'm just gonna pinch it shut. I like these for two reasons. One, they're fun to make. But two, you can either fill that bottom part in, or you can fire it and even put like a little piece of metal screen at the bottom. Or you could put little clay screen at the bottom. Or you can just leave it open and your planter will drain nicely if it's some kind of plant that needs that kind of drainage. Or you just can leave it open. Or you can take a ball of clay and patch it. Like right now, I kind of like those edges inside, but I'm probably going to smooth them to make it stronger so you can see all those seams. And if I wanted to seal that hole, if I take a ball of clay, just kind of make it into a tiny hamburger. I could put my hand underneath and just press that on and blend it in, and then that will solve my gap. And I can also use some of that clay. See how I pushed it down in the seams right there? That's kind of like when you build something out of slabs, you usually lay a coil between the edges of the thing, so that way you can strengthen it because it's most likely to break along the seams. So this is a good way to strengthen the seams on the inside of your piece that you're making. Anybody got any more questions for me? I'll threaten you with more dad jokes.
Yes, one more joke.
Okay. Let's see. Why was the lettuce blushing? It saw the salad dressing. How much does a pirate pay for an ear of corn? Buccaneer. You know what the pirate said at its 80th birthday party? "I'm matey." I like that one. I don't know. I don't sleep that much, and sometimes they're just in there. Did you hear about the skeleton that walked into the coffee shop?
No.
I did. He said, "I'm going to get a cup of coffee and a mop." It went right through him.
If we wanted to buy a Hollie ceramics original, how would we go about doing that?
Well, to be honest with you, my website is down at this moment, but I did bring these business cards, and it has my website on the back, and I am not a tech extraordinaire, but I'm doing my best to fix it and put a shopping cart on this page, and it's on the back of these. My goal is by the end of this month to have it functional. So I can't promise that it will be at the end of this month, but sometime in the near future, it will be fixed. And then that's how you can solve your,
Just email me.
you're hired.
I was just thinking, how many people would like to see a workshop on how to build a website?
I've built it. Yeah, there's a lot of people that need that. Yeah. Okay, so now it's filled. It's still sloppy, but it's okay. I'll come back to it. But there's my little three-legged planter happening. I think it needs some stripes. Do you guys think it needs stripes? It's getting some, whether you think it does or not. Okay, here's my fancy brush kit that was $32 at Ensika. And it has all these lovely little brushes in there. Sometimes these are good brushes. For glazing, I like this kind. And I especially like this brand because I get annoyed at the one that has the gaps right there because then it's dripping on everything all the time and it makes me mad. So I bought this because I approve of this technique because it saves me some troubles. But for this next thing, I'm going to use some brushes like this, and then I have these things. I think they're called fine liners. I don't know. The name doesn't really matter. The only time in my life I've ever ordered something that relates to makeup is this case right here. It's a lipstick holder, but it works awesome for these things, which are worth every penny because they have a needle tip in here and an unclogging device over here. And so every time you put the cap back on, it unclogs the needle, and it is fantastic because you can write these really thin lines and just get clean, crisp things. And I kind of like that. I don't really mind if it drips sometimes. My least favorite part of these is putting the lid back on because my glasses prescription is in desperate need of updating. I can't see it. And I now know what my grandma was talking about when she could not thread the needle, and she used to get so mad when she was sewing because I feel that.
And are those just like velvet underblades?
Yep. This is Amico Velvet Bright Orange. I think the reds, one of them is radiant, one of them is just regular, but I love these underglazes. They're super reliable. I like Speedball ones fine too. They're mostly the same, all different brands, just slightly different hues, I guess. But I used to use these a lot when I taught high school, and I know they're reliable, and I've tested them with a lot of the glaze combos that I use, so I usually stick with this brand, but there's a lot of good ones out there. Yes.
That's right.
I mean, I don't want it to look perfect. I kind of like those gaps. I like printmaking for that reason too. Is there any other printmaking people in here? You know what I mean by visual static? When you're making a print and it leaves those sort of gaps, graininess. I kind of like that same vibe when I'm putting stripes on things. I'm not going to ever survive in a British pottery because it's never going to be perfect, but I kind of like it that way. In real life, if I was making this in my studio, I probably would have waited a little bit longer because slightly drier would have been better, but I'm fine with what's happening. The hardest part of teaching people to use the wheel is that you hold still while the wheel moves, and that same concept applies to this sort of technique. There's this ceramic technique called sgraffito, kind of like scratchboard if you're a 2D artist. There's a black surface and you scratch through it to show the layers underneath, and this is sort of like Hollie sgraffito, I guess, because I just like to carve some lines in there because I don't want it to be too perfect. I find it annoying when it's super crisp. Like I said, I'd go to Target and buy a super crisp perfect thing if I wanted it to have that vibe. But I like putting a little bit of color on at this stage because it's just sort of animated. This is actually my favorite color of clay. There's something about clay in this mode when it's this color. If it could just stay like that and be done, I would be pretty happy about it. What time is it? Anybody know? Oh. Okay, that's my planner.